She stood over the bench like she owned the whole courtroom, tapping her pen, staring down at him as if he was already guilty. "You wasted this court's time," she snapped. "I don't care what your lawyer says, you're going to jail today." The room shifted uncomfortably, but she didn't notice. She was too busy glaring at the black man standing calmly in front of her, hands folded, eyes steady. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He just watched her, almost like he was waiting for something. That made her even angrier. "You people think you can talk your way out of anything," she hissed, leaning forward. "Well, not in my courtroom." His attorney tried to speak. "Your Honor, the evidence shows." She slammed her gavel so hard the clerk jumped. "I said he's going to jail." The man finally lifted his eyes, slow, deliberate. There was no fear in them. Just a kind of quiet power that didn't fit the way the judge expected her, suspect, to behave. She hated that. It made her double down. "You'll be held without bail," she said sharply. "Effective immediately." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Even the bailiff hesitated. But the judge barked, "Move. Take him." The bailiff stepped forward, unsure, and just as he reached for the man's wrist, a phone buzzed loudly on the judge's desk. She looked down, annoyed, until she saw the caller ID. Her face drained of color. It was the U.S. Attorney General. Before she could react, the man she tried to jail finally spoke, calm, quiet, almost too controlled. "You really should answer that," he said. "It's about me." The entire courtroom froze. Because his voice didn't sound like a man afraid of jail. It sounded like someone who knew the truth. And knew she was seconds away from finding out who he really was. Her fingers shook as she picked up the phone, trying to hide it by tightening her grip. "Why yes, Attorney General, this is Judge Halston." Then her eyes widened. She pulled the phone away for a second, like she couldn't believe what she heard, then put it back to her ear. What do you mean he's not to be detained?" she whispered. He's the defendant." The voice on the other end exploded loud enough for the clerk to hear. "He is not a defendant. He is the federal director overseeing your court. Do not touch him." The phone slipped from her hand and clattered across the bench. The courtroom went silent. Slowly, painfully, she lifted her eyes toward the man she had tried to send to jail. And for the first time since he walked in, he smiled, that calm, almost disappointed kind of smile someone gives when they warned you, and you didn't listen. She whispered, "Federal Director." He nodded once, stepping forward while the bailiff quickly backed away from him like he'd touched fire. "Director of the FBI," he said softly. "Assigned to investigate corruption in local courts." He let the words settle. And the judge looked like gravity itself had turned against her. But why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell the court who you were?" He tilted his head, voice cool and controlled. "I wanted to see how you treated someone you believed had no power." Her legs wobbled so hard she had to grip the bench to keep herself standing. The clerk whispered, "Oh my God." The bailiff muttered, "Director." "I almost cuffed the director." And the judge, now pale enough to blend with the papers on her desk, forced out, "Sir, Director, I apologize for any misunderstanding." He stepped closer, his tone still calm but sharp enough to cut through the air. "No, you don't apologize for a misunderstanding." He leaned in. "You apologize for what you are." She swallowed hard, chest rising fast. Then he nodded toward the back of the courtroom. "Bring them in." 2 agents in. Suits entered immediately, badges out, eyes forward. The agents approached her bench. The judge whispered, What is this?" The director folded his hands behind his back. "Judge Halston," he said, voice steady, "you're being placed under federal investigation for civil rights violations, unlawful detainment orders, and evidence tampering." She shook her head violently. No, you can't. This is my courtroom." He turned slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. "Not anymore." The agent stepped forward, and the courtroom watched as her world collapsed, exactly the way she had tried to collapse his. She walked back into the courtroom with a smile that confused everyone. The racist judge, already irritated, snapped, "You again. Sit down and stop wasting this court's time." But then the doors swung open. Two U.S. Marshals stepped in, followed by a man in a dark suit with a calm, commanding presence. Everyone turned. Even the bailiff straightened up. The judge, annoyed, said, "This is a closed proceeding. Identify yourself." The man raised his credentials. The room fell silent. The badge said, "Director, Federal Bureau of Investigation." And underneath it, "Case Lead, Judicial Corruption, Presiding Judge, Meredith Hale." Her face drained of color. The same black man she tried to bully earlier, the one she insulted, the one she ordered detained. He stepped forward, took off his glasses, and said quietly, "Judge Hale, I believe you were looking for me." The gallery gasped. Her hands trembled as she tried to speak, but the director cut her off. "You attempted to jail a federal officer, obstruct an investigation, and abuse your bench." He motioned to the marshals. "You are officially removed from the bench pending federal charges." The entire courtroom watched as the racist judge was handcuffed and escorted out, her own gavel still on the desk. The director turned to the stunned crowd. "Court is now properly in session." The marshals led Judge Hale through the side door, her heels scraping against the floor as she stumbled. Reporters waiting outside erupted into chaos the moment they saw her in cuffs, shouting questions she couldn't answer. Inside the courtroom, everyone remained frozen. The FBI director, calm, composed, unbothered, walked to the judge's bench and placed a thick case file on it. The file had her name printed in bold letters across the top. "Hale, Meredith, active investigation." Gasps spread through the room. He turned to the prosecutor and said, "You may remain seated. I'll be assuming authority here for the remainder of this proceeding." The prosecutor nodded quickly. The defendant, the young black man Hale had tried to jail for no reason earlier, stood silently, still shocked. The director approached him. "Mr. Carter," he said gently, "on behalf of the Bureau, I apologize for the treatment you received today." The man swallowed hard. "Sir, I didn't expect." "That's the point," the director replied. "She thought you had no one to protect you." He turned to the courtroom clerk. "Record this. All charges against Mr. Carter are dismissed with prejudice. He is free to go." The clerk nodded, hands shaking. The director wasn't finished. He pulled out another folded document from his suit. It bore the seal of the Department of Justice. Effective immediately, every case Judge Hale presided over in the last 3 years is under federal review. A collective gasp echoed across the courtroom. People realized the magnitude of what just happened. Careers would fall. Lives wrongfully damaged would finally be corrected. The director gave a final look around the room, his voice steady. "Justice isn't a courtroom. Justice is what we're here to protect." Then he turned and walked toward the main doors. As cameras flashed outside, leaving everyone in stunned silence. Outside, the moment the FBI director stepped through the courtroom doors, the entire building exploded with noise. Reporters shoved microphones forward, cameras flashing nonstop. But he raised one hand, and the whole crowd went silent. "You'll receive a full statement soon," he said, "but understand this, corruption on the bench will never be tolerated, no matter the robe, no matter the title." He walked down the steps as Judge Hale was being placed into a black SUV. She caught sight of him, her eyes wide, pleading, but he didn't acknowledge her. Her fate was already sealed. Inside the courthouse, the once terrified defendant, Mr. Carter, stepped into the hallway where the director's deputy waited. The deputy approached him. "Sir, the director would like a word before he leaves." Carter nodded nervously and followed. They met in a quiet conference room. The director stood by the window, the city skyline behind him. You handled yourself with dignity, the director said without turning. Most people would have reacted. You didn't. Carter swallowed. I didn't think anyone cared, until you walked in. The director finally faced him. I didn't walk in for you. Carter froze. I walked in because people like her think they can ruin lives without consequence. You just happened to be the one she tried today. He placed a card in Carter's hand. It had a direct number, no extension, no office line. Just a number only a handful of people in the country ever received. If anyone threatens you again, he said, call me. Carter stared at the card, stunned. The director moved toward the door and added, also, there will be compensation for the damages she caused. Bureau attorneys will contact you within the week. Carter's eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them away and stood tall. Thank you, sir. The director gave a subtle nod. Then he walked out of the room, out of the building, and into the waiting motorcade. As the doors closed and the vehicles pulled away, Carter looked down at the card in his hand, realizing his life had just changed forever.